Good morning. I'm Staci Berger, the President and CEO at the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey, the statewide association of more than 275 nonprofit community development organizations, housing advocates, and private sector partners who've been working for more than 30 years together to make sure that everyone has a safe, affordable place to call home in the Garden State. We're here this morning to talk about the Out of Reach report, which is a national annual report produced by our partners at the National Low Income Housing Coalition, of which I am proudly a board member, serving my first term, and the network and organizations like us around the country, rather. Every year, we release this report and we look to see how expensive it is for a renter to afford a fair market 2-bedroom apartment at minimum wage and at the housing wage. And the housing wage is the dollar amount that it costs for that tenant to be able to afford that apartment. And we have some data from Arnold Cohen, our senior policy advisor, about how much it costs and where it's more expensive in New Jersey and where it's least expensive in New Jersey. But overall, around the Garden State, it is incredibly expensive to rent a 2-bedroom apartment at fair market rent. Last year, New Jersey ranked 7th as the most expensive place to rent a 2-bedroom apartment. This year, as we thought it might, things have gotten a bit worse. We have now gone up in a list that nobody wants to be at the top of, and we are now the 6th most expensive place, or least affordable place, to rent a 2-bedroom apartment at fair market rent. We know that people are struggling to keep the roof over their head, especially as we come out of the pandemic. There is some confusion about whether there's an eviction moratorium at the federal level and how that interacts at the state level. Right now, New Jersey's removal moratorium is being enforced, and no one can be removed from their home for failure to pay their rent right now. That is likely to change in the coming months, so we urge you to stay tuned, to follow us on social media at HCDNNJ on Facebook and on Twitter, so that we can keep you up to date about what's happening. But we know that there is just simply not enough, there are not enough apartments for people who need to rent them, and that the cost of renting them is just outrageous at this point. So I want to turn it over to Arnold and have him talk a little bit about the data and what people are seeing in our communities. Arnold?
Yeah. Thank you, Staci. So we have our graphics here. So the National Income Housing Coalition, as Staci says, does this report annually by using fair market rents. It's a way to be able to compare the rents in New Jersey with the rents in Idaho and around the nation. Next slide. Okay, so as you see, New Jersey is the 6th most expensive, behind California, Hawaii, Massachusetts, New York, and District of Columbia. And to afford that modest 2-bedroom apartment in New Jersey would cost somebody $31.96 an hour, or over $66,000 a year in annual income, which is out of reach for many New Jersey renters. Next slide. So for a minimum wage worker in New Jersey, they would have to work 107 hours a week, or almost 3 full-time jobs, which is impossible in order to afford that modest 2-bedroom apartment. And even for somebody who earned the average or median wage of $19.38 an hour, could still not afford that modest 2-bedroom apartment, and that would have to work 1.6 jobs. The data goes into, breaks down by county. Statewide, New Jersey's 36%, a little over a third of our population is renters, but that really varies by state, where Hudson County, it's almost 2/3 of the state is renters, and other parts of the state, it's, under 20%. There's more and less expensive parts of the state, Hudson County being the most expensive, as you see, and parts of Cumberland and parts of Southern Jersey being least expensive. But regardless of where you live in the state, that modest 2-bedroom apartment is out of reach. And who it hits most is essential workers. If you look at the 30 jobs in New Jersey that most people are working on, 20 of them do not pay enough to be able to afford that fair market rent. So for example, there's 84,000 cashiers in New Jersey. Their average wage is $12.40 an hour, and they're unable to be able to afford. And the same is true with a lot of other essential workers that we depend upon. And so the next slide, please. So the question is what do we do about this? New Jersey's been at the top of most expensive states. How do we change that dynamic? And the way to do it is we have this opportunity, maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity right now, with a Congress and a president that are looking at more housing resources for this nation. And there is Congress is talking about housing as infrastructure, and part of that infrastructure package that is being presented is $40 billion for the National Housing Trust Fund. The National Housing Trust Fund is a program to be able to house people at the lowest, able to house people who are earning the lowest amount of money. Families below $30,000 a year. It's been highly successful in New Jersey in helping people avoid homelessness, people escaping domestic violence, but currently it's a very small program. If we brought it up to scale of $40 billion a year, it would go a long way to help us end homelessness in this country. At the same time, we need to invest in public housing. Public housing is where people at the lowest income can live, and they deserve a decent place to live, and we haven't been investing in public housing in this country. And the third part of that is to have rental assistance available to everybody who is eligible. Currently, out of every 4 people who are eligible for rental assistance, 1 person is able to get it. Having rental assistance can really make the difference between somebody having a decent roof over their head and being really in a horrible situation for them and their family. And like food stamps or other entitlement programs, rental assistance should be that entitlement program. It should be there for everybody who is eligible. There's legislation that Maxine Waters is going to soon present in Congress to do this. We hope to have this as part of the infrastructure bill. And this is the way in which we can really change New Jersey and the nation from being one in which some people have a good place to live and many other people do not, to a place where everybody has a decent roof over their head. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnold. I just want to reiterate that last point. We saw last weekend and early this week that, we have billionaires going into space with some public subsidy. And I think it's fair to say that if we can put people into outer space, we can make sure that everyone here has a place to call home. It's not that we don't know how to do this or that we aren't able to. It's that we simply have not had the political will in Washington to make sure that everyone has the resources to have a safe, affordable place to call home. And we know that is an absolute necessity for a civil society, for a place where we take care of each other and we make sure that people aren't living on the streets. As we watch the pandemic begin to recede, we hope here in New Jersey, where we have done a great job getting people vaccinated and making sure that everyone was able to stay home safely if they could. We know that making that there's going to be an eviction and foreclosure tsunami unless we make sure that people are able to afford a safe place to live. And as we're looking at variants and other public health potential crises, we need to make sure that we don't miss this opportunity to keep people safely and stably housed. A place to live in a safe neighborhood where people choose to be near their family, near their place of business, near their place of worship, should absolutely be within reach. And so it's disappointing that we continue to see this report show up every year, that New Jersey shows up in the top 10 and almost always in the top 7 or 8. And we're sixth going forward. We can do better. We know that New Jersey has begun to reinvest in our housing market, and we thank the governor and the lieutenant governor for putting the funds towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and for moving the rental assistance funding from the emergency allocations from the federal government to help make sure that people can afford the rent. We can do more together, and we look forward to doing that in the coming months and years. Thanks everyone for being with us. If you are interested in seeing the data yourself, you can always find that on our website, which is www.hcdnnj.org. And we're happy to answer questions. If you have those, you can email them to me at sberger@hcdnnj.org. And I'll send them to Arnold, because that's who knows the answers to most of these. So between the two of us, we'll get the answers, and Nina as well. I want to thank Nina Raniero, our communications director, for making today possible, and to give a huge shout out to the tremendous staff at the National Low Income Housing Coalition, who have just been dogged and persistent and relentless in their pursuit of housing justice for everyone in our country. So thank you to NLHC, to the network staff, to Arnold for always having the data at the tip of his fingertips, and to all of our members and allies out there working to make sure that everyone can afford to call New Jersey home.